Hi, I'm Helen Bauer, and this is the Heart of Hospice podcast. The Heart of Hospice podcast is your source for compassionate and informative discussions about hospice and end-of-life care. I'm a certified hospice and palliative care nurse with over 15 years of experience. Whether you're a caregiver, someone with a serious illness, or you simply need to know more about hospice care, this podcast is for you. Join me as we explore all the aspects of hospice, from the details of caregiving to the emotional and spiritual dimensions of end-of-life journeys. For more resources and to connect with me, visit theheartofhospice.com and find us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Keep listening for today's episode.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
This episode is being sponsored by bkbooks.com. BK Books helps care teams and families understand what to expect at the end of life. Created by Barbara Carnes, these trusted booklets and videos explain the physical and emotional changes of dying with warmth and clarity. Whether you're guiding others or caring for someone you love, BK Books brings understanding that eases fear and fosters peace. Explore our compassionate resources at bkbooks.com. This episode is being sponsored by Lasting Remembrance. Lasting Remembrance knows that sometimes words aren't enough. If you're struggling to find the right thing to say to someone who's grieving, a memorial blanket offers comfort and meaning. A memorial blanket will become a permanent keepsake to be treasured for years to come. Visit lastingremembrance.com today to create a keepsake that honors a memory. Use the code Heart of Hospice to receive a 10% discount.
My guest today launched his business after personally seeing the challenges of being an executor of an estate after a death. Today's guest is David Mulqueen, the founder of AnnCare. David watched his fiancée struggle under the weight of all the paperwork and the tasks while settling her aunt's estate. That experience for him showed a gap between hospice support and the overwhelming reality that families face after the loss of someone they love. David believes that families shouldn't have to manage post-loss administrative work on their own. At AnnCare, the focus centers on supporting caregivers by creating human-centered systems that reduce the 80-plus hours of administrative burden that families face, allowing the care to extend beyond the bedside. In today's interview, David and I talk at length about the realities of figuring out an estate after someone dies, all the tasks and the red tape that come with the job of being an executor. He shares the situation that his partner dealt with when her aunt died and how he saw the need for families to have help to figure out all these small, tedious steps while they're dealing with grief at the same time. I would really encourage you to check out the free downloadable executor guide that AnnCare offers. It has great guidance and a checklist for moving step by step through the process of managing an estate. You can access all the resources and the services that AnnCare has to offer at anncare.io. That's ANNCare.io. I'd really encourage you to stay connected for this conversation. There's a lot to learn. David, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you with me.
Hey, Helen, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I like to start out with some sort of icebreaker question, but I'm trying something new in 2026. About 10 or 12 years ago, I developed a habit that my family found very annoying, where I made a gratitude list every morning and I sort of forced whoever I was talking to that morning to make one with me. So I want you to do a little gratitude list with me. Just 3 items. Doesn't have to be big, not, world peace or anything like that. Something small is fine. And I'll go first. So my things for today would be the coffee shop had the tea that I like to drink. My dog did not run out and get dirty in the yard today. And I had a FaceTime call with one of my grandkids.
Okay. Now, are these daily gratitude?
Yes.
Okay. 3 things. Well, I think first and foremost, today I'm grateful that my dog Rocket didn't throw up again. Yesterday's walk, he had about the world's largest pool of vomit. So that was a win for today.
Definitely.
Yeah. We just got back from a trip, and so that lacked some of the normal nutrients that we would normally have. So eating healthy again, having a smoothie this morning, and again, being away from home, getting some time to spend with our cat Marlin. He's a cuddle monster. So those are probably my 3. No vomit from the dog, fresh vegetables and fruit getting into the system, and some cuddles with Marlin over here.
That's a good one. That's a good
Yeah.
one. Being a dog owner myself, I totally have appreciation for that first one. Definitely do.
There's nothing worse. We don't even need to get in there. Yeah.
No, the things that we do for our fur babies, right?
Yes.
Yes. I just talked to my dog. I have a therapy dog that I work with. He and I are a therapy team. And I was just telling him a few minutes before we started talking that I would be through soon and we'd go for a walk. Fortunately, nobody ever sees me do these things and have these conversations. But
yeah.
Okay, we have a great conversation and a great topic coming up today that a lot of our listeners are going to find valuable. We're talking about AnnCare. We're talking about executor assistance services. You are the founder of AnnCare. And of course, you're a business person, but why the interest in this type of business? What was your motivation to get started?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, I think if you had asked me 10 years ago, is this a space that I would ever be in? The answer would have been no. And so, as we start to look at AnnCare and why we're even here today, I think it really boils down to a personal experience. My partner and I, we ended up losing a family member a while back. And, like most folks, you can plan for grief. But when it came to navigating the estates, the paperwork, everything, it was completely overwhelming. There's no roadmap, there was no system, there was really no support in how to really navigate that entire process. And my partner was the sole beneficiary of the estate. She's incredibly capable. I always say that she's about as efficient as they come, and I blame that on her German heritage. But for her, she really struggled with it. And there, talked about a lot of inefficiency in just the space in general. Everything is incredibly fragmented, and on top of that, it's emotionally exhausting. And so, as I was kind of watching her go through this whole process, I couldn't help but think that there has to be a better way to do this. And my background is in marketing operations. I really value efficiency, structure, education, and seeing that there really wasn't a company in the space doing this type of stuff, decided to build one. And so that's really kind of what we do here today, and has really helped families with that paperwork, and end up saving them about 80 hours of work. So, and having seen people go through that, and really believing that there is a more efficient and structured way to go about this, is something that is really motivating to me. And going back to the business side of things, is I'm a builder, and so I love building things, and I love building things that are of value to people. And it's one of those things where whether or not people end up working with us, we've got resources for them to handle this by themselves if they so wish to. So it's kind of a win-win at the end of the day, where, if people decide to work with us, obviously there is a huge value add in being able to support the individuals there, but also being able to create those resources for people to follow on their own end is something that's really really valuable and rewarding as a business owner as we go into this space here.
I love it that you saw a problem and you built a solution. That's a really great thing to be able to do for your customers and your clients, but really to know that you're adding value. And I want to talk about why this is so damn hard. Why being an executor and getting these things done, it's just ridiculously hard. Ridiculously hard. And you've got, most companies are going to give you 3 days off. Even hospice agencies and funeral homes probably don't offer more than 3 days of bereavement leave. So you're supposed to get those tasks done, grieve, take care of all the funeral arrangements.
Yeah.
And you got 3 days to get your stuff together.
Yeah. It's an insane amount of work. And I think as you look at just death in general, it's a conversation that most people avoid. And I think there's some reasons, there's a lot of reasons behind that. But as we start to look at why this is so hard, obviously grief is a huge component to that, right? Like if you're working in hospice, you understand how the human body and brain works through that process. That's a huge component of that. But on top of that, for a lot of folks, this is the first time that they're navigating an estate. And while they're grieving, on top of working a full-time job, managing a family, day-to-day activities, it just becomes this huge workload, a huge mountain of paperwork that you have to navigate. The tasks themselves aren't that complicated, but every single institution has a completely different process. There is legal parameters that need to be brought into place. There are different paperwork that needs to be completed. And ultimately, they're very tedious, it's repetitive, and it's emotionally draining on top of everything. You're tracking down information that's not yours. A lot of this feels like a scavenger hunt at the same time. And there's just so many different components that come into this that make it so incredibly challenging. And on top of that, you're worried about doing things wrong, or you're having to repeat your story over and over again. And so it just starts to kind of compound from a mental load standpoint, and just adds to the weight of navigating settling out the estate here.
Yeah. Adds to the grief burden, definitely.
Yeah.
And not everybody is able to go to their person's personal papers and personal things. And here's a list that says, here is the key to my safe deposit box. And here's the bank where I have it.
Exactly.
Not everybody is that organized in how they manage their finances and their business and their personal items.
Exactly. And just on that note, I mean, yeah, obviously there's people who are more organized than others. And even in those situations where somebody is incredibly organized, let's take the bank in this particular case. Sometimes you can call up a 1-800 number or a local number, whatever that may be, and you get on the phone and you're talking to somebody and you're saying, hey, like, I'd like to close out this account. And the first question that you get is, why are you closing out this account? And you have to give them the reason why. My aunt passed away, my mom passed away, my spouse passed away, whatever that is. And sure, condolences are offered, but frequently what can end up happening is the individual, after they've given you their condolences, is they say, I'm not the right person to talk to, let me transfer you. And this can happen multiple times, not just with banks, with utility companies, with other organizations, and just that burden of having to repeat your story over and over and over again to eventually get to the right person and then realize that you don't have the right paperwork can be an incredibly exhausting experience that adds to that weight.
Yeah, if you could just go into the first touch person that you talk
to,
and they can say, oh yeah, here's what you need and I can help you. And you could rattle that off, or you could fax it over, whatever. Yeah.
What we can dream, right? We can dream.
Oh, yeah. Wouldn't that be crazy? But it's so messy. It's
Yeah.
so complicated. And here's another thing that occurs to me. So while all of this executor stuff is supposed to be happening, we're also still working and taking care of our kids and our spouses and hopefully ourselves. But then if you work a job and you have to call a financial entity or wherever, healthcare entity during business hours,
Mm-hmm.
that's a real challenge.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, just a personal example here. I'm migrating 401ks into a single account. Um, I'm in a clear mental state, and I have two accounts that I need to print out paperwork and I need to get notarized, and it's been sitting on my desk for 3 weeks. And
Yeah.
that's not because it's not important to me, but it's you're managing everything else, and nobody wants, myself included, does not want to face paperwork. And so you add grief into the mix, and it becomes incredibly low on the priority list here. And so
Yeah.
exactly that. It's just one of those things where you don't want to face it. On top of managing the day-to-day tasks, 40-hour work week, you throw kids into the mix. Talk about pets here earlier as well. There's
Yeah.
only so much time during the day, and if you're operating 5 to 9 after your 9 to 5, whether that be in the morning or in the evening, your window to engage with those organizations who can help you out is pretty slim. And for most folks, you've got an hour on lunch break, and sometimes that's not enough. So, when you start to get into this and navigating the entire estate settlement process, you can really quickly understand how this can take 6 to 12 months, sometimes longer, depending on the situation.
And I would think even the simplest of tasks becomes daunting,
Hmm.
like finding a phone number to talk to the right person about some sort of financial account. I would think that, like you're saying, the big scavenger hunt.
Well, and it becomes where do you begin, right? You know,
Yeah, which one is most important? What do you start with?
and a lot of times you're just like, well, let me just head to the contact us page and I'll call a 1-800 number. And in theory, that sounds great, but we talked about navigating phone trees earlier on. Um,
Yeah.
I think what a lot of folks, it doesn't even register for them because they've never gone through this process, is that there's usually an estate specific line, especially with financial institutions that you engage with. And so, yeah, just having to go through the research of every single one of these organizations, understanding their process, the correct phone number, the correct forms, whether there's a digital initiation side of things to begin the process, it becomes incredibly mentally tasking on the individual who's managing the estate.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest roadblock with these tasks? What do you think, for somebody who's trying to get started, what do you
Yeah,
think the
well,
biggest roadblock is?
it's a good question. I mean, I think the biggest roadblock is really grief. Um, Obviously, it slows your decision making, your memory, your focus, your motivation. That is easily the biggest one. But I think the second piece of this is really, how do you stay organized? Um, when you start to go through all of the accounts, and I think this is accurate whether or not you have a really large estate or even a really small estate. Staying organized with the paperwork, the status, um, what type of follow-ups are needed from you, from the organization. Really staying organized in this is something that a lot of people tend to overlook. Um, and so, as we look at the roadblocks again, grief is really that big component here. But staying organized and on top of the multiple organizations that are part of this process.
Yeah, because the grief is going to cover everything. You may not have a very complicated estate. It may be very
Hmm.
small and very simple, but it's the grief can still be big. And
Exactly.
what do they call it? Grief brain, where you feel like
Yeah.
you're walking through oatmeal all the time and it's like a fog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's as you look at this, even though you're walking through a fog, right? You can think of, all right, well, there's the obvious things. There's the car, there's the house, there's the credit cards. Um, but as you start to unpack that, because you've got grief brain, there's going to be things that you miss. There are going to be things that aren't even top of mind. And so, a lot of things that we see people overlook are things like fraud protection. notifying the credit bureaus, canceling out voter registration, setting up anti-spam mail parameters, mail forwarding, right? There's a lot of these things that people tend to miss because it's not top of mind. And it's your brain's just not operating in the same manner there. So, grief is incredibly challenging for the individual to manage, but it really starts to impact how they navigate the components of the estate and their ability to execute it in a really thorough manner.
Yeah. Actually, you've already mentioned, I have been an executor for one estate. You've already mentioned 3 different things that never occurred to me.
I've got plenty more. I mean, there's lost asset searches. I do this as an example with clients, but for myself, and years and years ago, I was into crypto to some degree, and there was a payout from a company called Coinbase. I didn't know about the payout, and as I go through and do a lost asset search for myself, there's anywhere between $50 to $100 just sitting there waiting to be claimed. And these are state-specific resources that you can utilize. And you would be so surprised about what we find for the individuals, both who are managing the estate and for the person's estate that they are managing, what pops up.
Interesting.
And, probably the last thing that I would add in there is just social media in general, right? It's just like, well, what do we need to do that for? Do you want to memorialize that or delete it? And it's one of those things where you're like, well, they're not using it. Like, what do we need to do about it? And I mean, case in point is for my partner managing her aunt's account, 6 months after she passed, the account was hacked into, and having to deal with navigating friends and families and updating everybody, engaging with the social media platform to say, hey, like, why is this going on? Can we shut this down? Again, just those small details that you don't even think about and are so low on the priority list because you've got other stuff going on. They're just easy areas for people to overlook, and in a completely understandable manner as well. Like, we understand why you overlooked that, but yeah, so many components of that you wouldn't even think about.
That's a really interesting aspect of the social media part, because we talk on the show about you need to shut down the social media accounts, and so those logins and passwords become really important information to make sure that your person who's going to be your executor knows where those things are. But it never occurred to me that it's a really good idea to shut those things off because they can be hacked.
Yep.
And if you're not monitoring them, that's a really dangerous area.
Exactly. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, is having access to the accounts. I think the biggest thing with all of this is if you have the luxury or privilege of working on an estate where the individual was organized and thorough and detail oriented, amazing, right? There's still going to be a lot of work, but that's a huge stepping stone. But for other circumstances, in the context of social media, you don't always need the account logins, right? And that's where a lot of the legal paperwork comes into play, where you can memorialize or delete these accounts specifically with the social media platform. So there's dedicated processes for each one of these, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, where you can go ahead and basically freeze the account. And it essentially says to the platform that nobody can log into this account ever again, whether that's deleted or memorialized. So there's processes that you can take to protect yourself against that. And it's not that necessarily anything bad is going to happen from that, but it's more of a protection of your future emotional bandwidth, and having to relive some of the emotions that you experienced after losing a loved one there.
Yeah, I would think there would be some inconvenience, and of course there would be some time dedicated to if an email's hacked or a social media
Absolutely.
account is hacked.
Yeah.
It actually, when you start pulling the threads, it can be a lot. I feel a little overwhelmed just thinking about it, quite frankly. I hope you're enjoying this episode. We're going to pause for just a minute. My guest has more to share.
When someone you care about is nearing the end of life, it can be hard to know what to expect. BK Books is here to help families, caregivers, and professionals find comfort through understanding. Created by hospice nurse and end-of-life educator Barbara Carnes, these simple, trusted booklets and videos explain what happens when a person is dying, the changes that occur, the signs you can expect, and ways to bring comfort and provide care. With clear, compassionate information, BK Books helps you face one of life's hardest moments with confidence instead of fear. Whether you're supporting a loved one or guiding a family, these resources make a real difference. Resources from BK Books have helped hundreds of thousands of families and healthcare professionals navigate dying with confidence and compassion. People don't die like they do in the movies. Understanding what's happening can bring calm when everything feels uncertain. Explore the trusted guides and learning tools from hospice pioneer Barbara Carnes at bkbooks.com. This episode is being sponsored by Lasting Remembrance. When a loved one passes away, finding the right way to honor their memory matters. Whether you yourself are grieving or you're looking for a way to comfort someone else who is, you want something meaningful. That's where Lasting Remembrance comes in. We specialize in memorial blankets, beautiful, personalized keepsakes that blend seamlessly into everyday life and keep the loved one present. Choose from a variety of designs, whether you want one customized with meaningful text or a photo of a cherished memory, or a timeless symbol such as a cardinal or a tree. Each blanket is thoughtfully created, professionally produced, and shipped directly to you. Sometimes words aren't enough. When you're struggling to find the right thing to say to someone who's grieving, a memorial blanket offers comfort and meaning, a lasting reminder of their loved one. Unlike flowers that fade, the blankets become a permanent keepsake to be treasured for years to come. Lasting Remembrance can help create a meaningful gift or give you comfort during difficult times. Visit lastingremembrance.com today to create a keepsake that honors a memory. Use the code Heart of Hospice to receive a 10% discount. Lasting Remembrance, comfort they can hold on to.
If you were talking to somebody who was going to take on the executor's job, because hopefully executors know in advance, this is for any of you who are supporting someone who needs to write a will and create all this documentation and instruction for your end of life stuff. Hopefully your executor is capable and willing when that time comes. So what would you tell somebody who's taking on an executor's job, but they don't know a whole lot about that person or the estate that they have been asked to execute, if that's the right term?
Yeah.
What would you tell somebody who really didn't know a whole lot about the person and what was going on?
Yeah. I mean, that is a good question. And I mean, it happens more frequently than you'd like to see. I think depending on the person, I think ultimately the biggest thing is be patient and be kind to yourself. If you've never navigated this before, it is a process, both emotionally and from a practical point of view. And so as you start to get into where do you begin, how do you manage this, you really need to embrace your inner Sherlock Holmes here. If you have the ability to access a will or trust, obviously that's your first point, and where you go. There'll be legal context that you can engage with and understand the ins and outs of that individual's life. But outside of that, I mean, tax returns are really an incredible resource, and they can tell a powerful story, especially if the individual's estate is more on the financially savvy side of things. Whether there's interest or dividends, there's many different components, whether or not they owned a business, real estate, right? Like there's so many different components in that can really start to help you unpack. Now, where do you find that tax return, right? Like that's a different story. Safe deposit boxes.
Can you get access to it? Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, really, there's not an easy way to uncover that stuff. Safe deposit boxes, filing cabinets, those are good resources. And then, at the end of the day, you kind of have to go old school and going through the mail. So it is, if you don't have the luxury of knowing the accounts, knowing the individual that well, you really need to put on your detective hat and start to think through, where are these documents located elsewhere? And obviously tax returns, safe deposit boxes, filing cabinets, folders in the closets, office drawers, right? Like there's going to be so many different areas in which that information could live. And then ultimately talking to anybody who was close to the individual. Like, how did this person live their life? Who can I talk to really start to unpack this? You need to look for clues that can help tell the story and fill in the blanks for you.
What do you think that the digital stuff makes it harder? Because we're saying paperwork, but a lot of this stuff is stored digitally these days, like tax returns even. People don't necessarily print out a tax return. Do you think the digital work like this makes it harder for an executor to manage things?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I know a lot of, a lot of younger folks, everything is digital, right? A lot of organizations are asking if you would like to sign up for e-statements. It's convenient for the end user. It's convenient for the business because they don't have the cost of paper. One thing I didn't mention is, if you're able to get into the individual's computer, obviously going through folders, right? Did they store any of that stuff on their computer? On their browser, did they use auto-saved passwords, right? Going through email, like these are other components that can help tell some more of that digital story. And in some cases, you're not going to get all of that. In the instance that the individual was quite wealthy and didn't have legal contacts or financial contacts, there is the potential route of hiring a private investigator. They are very costly, and so it wouldn't be for everybody. And the chances of a wealthy person not having those financial contacts that could help point you in the right direction are pretty slim. But you kind of go through an order of operations of, okay, snail mail, computer, passwords, professional contacts, and then does it make sense to take next steps to engage with somebody who could track down that information a little bit easier. So that's pretty rare when you need to hire a private investigator to uncover that stuff. Most of the time you can get what you need by going through both the physical copies as well as a computer or mobile device there.
Yeah, it is a huge job. I know that in my experience with as an executor, I could not locate the key to the safe deposit box, but I knew there was one. And I had to wait 2 weeks after I was able to give them a death certificate and letter of testamentary, which is the process here in Texas and what we have to do, before they would allow me to have access to the safe deposit box. And inside that box were instructions that this person had left for personal items, not like financial and things like that, no funeral arrangements or anything like that. But it was all, my dog and my collections and some jewelry she had that was meaningful for her. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have had this stuff 2 weeks ago. It didn't happen overnight. It was a lot of hurry up and wait. It was a very halting, stop and go process. At least it was for me.
I mean, it is for many people as well. And I think that goes back to what we were saying at the beginning of this is try to be patient with this. I know easier said than done, but really understanding that this is going to be a process, obviously emotionally, but also from a practical point of view, right? It is going to take 7 to 14 days to get the death certificate. It's going to take some time to get the letters testamentary or administration. Those are both going to be very important documents to getting everything transferred over appropriately. Now, obviously, this goes back to, if you can plan ahead and you can add beneficiaries to accounts, or you can signal transfer on death, that makes it significantly easier. Right. But again, like not everybody has that. And so if you need to take those extra precautions, just understanding that it is going to be a process, it's going to take some time, and trying to be patient of how these organizations and as well as the legal system, how they operate. At the end of the day, like the legal side of things, and honestly, death certificates are both government organizations, and we all know that the government doesn't work fast. And so just understanding that, I think, can be really helpful in just setting expectations with yourself. And you want to move fast, you want to get through this as quickly as possible. It's not a fun experience, but understanding that, okay, we need to be patient, and we need to kind of have a little bit of empathy about these individuals behind these organizations and what they need to go through and the hoops that they need to jump, can be helpful in at least just setting those expectations with yourself.
Right. I remember being very frustrated that I couldn't just whip through this list, click, 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 click,
Yeah.
and just knock them all out.
Yeah.
It drove me crazy. There would be 2 or 3 steps after I talked with someone. I would be adding to my work list
Yep.
every time I tried. Oh, so frustrating. And I had never done it before. I
Yep.
was, basically making it up as I went. And I had a lot of anger and guilt because this was a friend of mine. I didn't really know her very well, but I had known her for a long time. And she made me and my husband executors, but she never spoke with us about any details.
Oh, wow. That would be hard.
Yeah.
That would be
Yeah.
really hard.
So I felt guilty that I knew that she was going to do this, but I had not pushed her to talk to us about it. As a hospice nurse, I
Yeah.
should have known. When she made the will, it was way before I was working in end of life care. But then after it happened and she got sick and she died, I was very angry with her because she left a big mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that would be incredibly frustrating. I'm sorry you had to go through that.
I think that's probably pretty common because we don't want to talk about death. And having an estate, having an executor, you have to say, okay, when I die, this is what needs to happen. And of course, nobody even wants to say the first part of that sentence, much less, here's where the safe deposit box is, all of those things. So confusing. It's really the scavenger hunt, I think, is the right term.
Yeah, I think it really is. And even then you could maybe trick your mind into thinking it's a game. I mean, not for everybody.
Good luck.
Not for good. May the odds forever be in your favor.
Yes, worst
not
game
for everybody,
ever.
but
no.
Worst game ever.
Well, so at AnnCare, you have created the solution to this problem, which is amazing. And I want to say, we're always supportive on the podcast for resources that are free and accessible. And AnnCare has a great free download that you follow up with an email, and there's some support there, some guidance on how to use it, and reminding people this is a process. It's not going to happen overnight. It's multifaceted, multi-layered. You're going through a lot. So give yourself some grace, give yourself space to figure this out. And I love that. I downloaded my free checklist myself to have a look at it. Yeah. And it's really good. So tell me about the services, including the free stuff that AnnCare offers to support people who are having to do this huge scavenger hunt.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the executor guide, I think, is the name of the resource that you downloaded. Pretty self-explanatory. It's really designed to help provide a little bit of clarity for folks navigating estate settlement. It's not going to cover everything in terms of, you were talking about that checklist that you were following. There are going to be follow-up steps there, but it gives you some clarity and understanding of the categories that you need to go through. That is a free resource available for download. We also have just released more robust resources section on our website. That also includes our companion planner, which is more of a pre-death resource. Again, it's a free resource, but it's very good for planning and organizing and having those conversations earlier on. And then there's also our blog as well that talks a little bit more about the practical steps needed for each institution. So notifying the credit bureaus, going through banks, what type of documentation. So we're trying to spend a lot of time and energy in building out those resources. And we'll also be coming out with a how-to video series that we'll be releasing on YouTube soon as well. So, I think this kind of goes back to me spending 10 years in marketing before this, where my my principles were, how do we add value and how do we educate? And regardless of whether or not an individual decides to work with us, I want to be able to make sure that we are able to provide that value to folks regardless of where they go. And so by creating that content that is genuinely helpful and practical and easy to consume and provides that guidance is really kind of core for how we go about and create and position ourselves in market.
So I have to tell you that looking at the executor guide, the free download, my favorite part is where it says step 1. And then it says step 2. It's got, it's delineated, which I think really helps people to create some structure instead of this huge ball of yarn that they have to untangle. So what if somebody doesn't want to handle all of this, or it gets complicated, or they don't have enough time to manage it and they really need some help? What kind of services does AnnCare offer that they can plug into?
Yeah, good question. So I think, if somebody doesn't want to handle the work themselves, that's really where we come into play. At the end of the day, we're an assistant to the executor. We help with the first step of the estate settlement process. We work really well within the first 30 to 60 days after the individual passes. And that's really an opportunity for you to allow you to process your emotions and get more clarity and relief. So ultimately, the best way to do that is by contacting us on our website. If you've got questions, you can engage for a free consultation, right? Hey, here's my situation. Can you help? Can you not help? 95% of the time we can. And, if it's one of those situations where you're like, hey, I'm ready to go, we do also have a straight to purchase option available on our site as well. So typically what most folks end up doing, though, is reaching out, giving us a call, submitting the form, contacting email. We'll go through a little Q&A, discovery, and then take next steps from there.
Nice. So if my listeners wanted to connect with AnnCare, find the resources, and check out the video series when it comes out, which I think would be really valuable to a lot of people, where can they go to find you?
Yeah, I think the easiest place is going to be via our website. We have a subscribe section at the bottom of our site. That's going to be the best place to keep in touch with us. We're always trying to update our resources, our content. We send something out once a month to our subscribers, and it's going to be the best place to stay up to date and really just engage with what's going on and the most current and accurate version of the content that we're releasing to our audience here. And
tell me the website, the web address.
Yeah, so it is AnnCare.io. Ann is spelt with 2 N's, care just like it's spelt. AnnCare.io. AnnCare.io. So I got to ask before we close, is the name Ann significant? Yeah, it's a good question. Short answer, it is. So when we were creating the brand, we wanted to personalize it. And, I had gone through a number of different names, some that I liked more than others. And, when I was talking to my partner about it and just throwing it back and forth, she was like, why not Ann? And I was like, that's kind of a good name. Like, her aunt's name was Debbie. I was like, what's the premise behind Ann? And Ann was her middle name. So it ties in really nicely to kind of that firsthand experience that we have with this experience. And I think, it just, as we look at it, when people work with us and engage with us, one thing that we try to think about or talk with our clients is, you're in Ann's care now. Oh, nice. Nice. I love that it makes it personal, because you know what? It's always personal. Yeah. It's a service, right? Yeah. I get that it's a business and it's a service, but it's personal. It always is. Yeah. Yeah. David, thank you so much for taking time and for the work that you're doing to support folks. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Helen, thank you so much for inviting me on. I've really enjoyed talking about this, and this podcast that you've put together, I think, is an incredible resource, and really excited and grateful to be on the show today, and have really enjoyed the conversation as well. Thanks for listening to the Heart of Hospice podcast.
Check out our sponsor in the show notes and please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. We would appreciate it if you would share this episode with your friends and family and anyone who needs to know more about hospice. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.